I went to this networking event for finance and tech people, saw a full room of white and Asian men, took an Instagram picture, posted on my story, asked people, hey, what do you guys think about diversity programs? And does it actually help people? Is there nothing inherent about human beings that are different that makes them more acclimed slash in tune with certain industries? Got a bunch of feedback, bunch of responses. People were angry, people were very opinionated. Thought I would take this time to summarize those things, layer in my own thoughts, and ask you guys what you guys think about diversity programs for women, people of color, LGBTQ people in finance and tech. Before I start this conversation, I think it's important to layer in the groundwork and think, are these things genuinely needed slash do people really deserve slash need to receive equal opportunity? I'm a big believer that equal opportunity does not equal equal result. Not everyone deserves to be a banker. Not everyone needs to be a banker. Not everyone needs to be in tech. But given that tech and finance are the overwhelmingly controlling industries at the moment and they make a lot of money, there is something to be said about the overwhelming abundance of males and white people and Asian people in these industries. Granted, the idea that we are now forcefully putting people into these industries or putting people that aren't deserving or aren't meritable into these industries is a different question. And I think the line that I am willing slash needing to draw is, at what point do we stop? Do we cheer and happy and celebrate when the entire tech industry, the entire finance industry is exactly made up of people in proportion to the real world? So we have 6 out of every 10 being white people, 2 being black people, 1.5 being Latin Americans, 0.5 being Asians. I'm sure I messed those ratios up. But you know what I'm saying. Do we draw the line? Do we stop and pause and stop these diversity programs as long as that is met? Do we stop when it's overwhelmingly not the majority? And at that point, then does the majority become the minority? If we ever hit a point where there's more women than men in finance, then do we reverse it? And are there going to be male diversity programs? My assumption is that the people that are fighting for such things aren't thinking that reverse. I also know that there's going to be raging comments asking and saying that we should not think about those things before we achieve actual equality, whatever that means. But I'm going to start this or go along with this video, assuming that we are saying that this is a necessary thing, that we need to make equality slash more representation in these spaces, and that there is nothing inherent about men that make them better at finance or tech. There is nothing better about men specifically that make them better coders. There's nothing like that. It's solely societal, solely nature, not nature, solely nurture, not nature. As you guys could tell by my facial expressions, I don't agree with many of those things, but for the sake of this video, let's pretend that everyone is of equal ability and it's more about nurture. Let's say we agree on these things and we say that equality we can worry about later, what fair looks like we can worry about later. I want to ask why this is only for tech and finance. Yes, those are very impactful industries. They are industries that make a lot of money, but there are other industries that are very impactful that are female dominated. Public education, for example. I'm full acknowledgement that they pay very poorly. This is an incentive issue in this country because public education is very important. In fact, it is a thing that touches most Americans as they grow up. It's the thing that impacts them the most, and it leads them to a certain direction. In fact, if we did public education correctly, we may not need some of these diversity programs. But public education is mainly by female teachers. I don't see any females or males complain about a toxic female culture present in public education sectors by female teachers and male teachers not being able to partake in female conversations and not being able to get promoted because they're male. Perhaps because that's not an issue, and maybe because we should only care about high earning potential jobs. Then there's the age-old question of sports. I don't see any diversity programs for Asians in the NBA. I don't think Jeremy Lin got through affirmative action to join whatever team that he was recruited to. You could argue that physical is different from mental, but now I'm going on this tangent that I was promising not to go off of. But maybe there's just some things that some types of people are specifically good at slash better than that the majority of others, and forcefully getting them in somewhere isn't necessarily the answer. The other question I also have is that people that get through these programs, these diversity programs, that take advantage of these diversity programs and get into these roles, that do these women in finance, women in tech days, or people of color, LGBTQ pride days, and get into these programs. I wonder if they actually feel good about going to these positions through those programs. I wonder if they feel empowered or feel like they're getting a spot that they worked hard for, instead of actually feeling like it's solely through these programs that they were able to get into these programs, into these jobs, and feeling like a chip on their shoulder for the rest of their career or life. I went to school that was majority white, and I was certainly not a product of affirmative action. There's no affirmative action for Asians, in my understanding. I'm sure they could have considered California. I'm sure they wanted some level of diversity, but there's no actual affirmative action for Asians, as I'm aware, in this country. But as I went to a majority white school, most people at the school, or many people at the school, made comments to me, often in jest, many of them are my friends, saying that you only got into school because you're Asian, or because you're Korean, or because you're from California. While I didn't care bigger picture, there were moments where I kind of questioned, like, did I only get into school because of XYZ, or was it a big part of the admission decision? And I am sure that given content like this, which I guess I'm only adding to the fire, people must every day, especially when they come through these programs, wonder, do I really deserve to be here, or have I only gotten here because of XYZ programs? This kind of goes into my next point, which somewhat goes against what I previously said, and this is purely anecdotal. I don't have any data to prove this to any certain degree. I don't even think data could be used to prove this, but every single person, and I truly mean every single person that I've talked to that has used these programs, used these diversity initiatives to get a job or try to get a job, whether they be women or people of color or LGBTQ individuals, whatever program they may have gone through, they are always, I'm going to use a bad word, schemy in how they've used it. I've seen them be overly proud of having used it, or taking a stance in the sense almost like, I deserve to use this, or you bet your ass I'm going to use this to get this job. And as someone who couldn't have access to those programs, and yes, you're going to go off your tangent and say that you were born with the privilege that you don't need those programs, but regardless, as a human being, especially when I was recruiting when I was 21, hearing people say those kind of things makes me wonder, I don't know, I truly ask you, and perhaps you're a pro-diversity program person, when you hear those kind of things, do you feel proud and empowered from those people saying, yeah, of course I'm going to abuse it. I'm going to use that and use it to my advantage to take that spot because it's what I deserve. The what I deserve narrative sounds like what the people that these types of people would hate / go against would say. Just food for thought. I think along that route, I also question that it's not really the people that actually need it that use these programs to get it. A lot of times at my private liberal arts school, people that could have gone it without it, plenty of women, plenty of girls who had tons of connections at investment banks and other tech firms through their family members, through the school, used women in tech, women in finance programs to get to these positions. When there could have been white males or Asian males that couldn't have gotten it because they don't have family connections or they didn't have the school connections. I had the privilege of having those connections, but there were tons of people that could have benefited from such connections or specific programs. Maybe it's growing up in rural North Carolina, rural Alabama, rural Wisconsin programs that have no access to these things. I saw plenty of African Americans who had connections, who grew up in wealthy neighborhoods that also used these African Americans in banking and tech finance programs to get into these positions. And when I say plenty, I obviously don't mean hundreds, but there were individuals that took advantage of these programs very purposefully and got into these spots and took these spots from people that I think could have benefited from them otherwise. Long story short, I think there's better ways to do these programs. And I understand that there's no perfect system, but I am of the belief that a lot of times the people that do these programs, that go through these programs to take these positions, aren't these nice folks that are suffering or have never had the opportunity to get into these prestigious firms or positions, and then finally getting the chance through this and working really hard to get into them. A lot of times people are just taking advantage of these things because people are selfish at the end of the day and they're going to take whatever they can get. I'm no exception. If I was in their shoes, I'd be doing the exact same thing. I really think it should be more about class and access to education. And you could argue that a lot of that is based off race and gender. But I think the paradigm shift has come, and especially on the woman versus men front. I'm not sure if that is the case in abundance. In closing, I don't have a solution. I'm not sure how to solve the problem if we agree that there is a problem, which I do to a certain extent. More on that, I think, on a different video. I think that the current solution doesn't really solve anything. I don't think it's going to make any paradigm shifts in the near-time future. I think all it's going to do is allow for people that don't really need it to take advantage of it and create further chips on the shoulder and have people like me look down / think differently about these people who in reality could have just gone through the regular program and done just as well, if not maybe better. But just because they use this program to get into things, they got the stigma, and I don't see the demographics changing much further. I'm sure that I overlooked a lot of things. In my privileged position, I thought over things that I shouldn't have. Please leave your comments in the below. I hope you watched the entire video, but I'm sure a lot of you are just going to comment based off the title. I would really love your thoughts. My Instagram audience seemed to really bite at it and think outrageously for various takes that I posted. But yeah, please let me know. As always, I thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Let's go.